That's the only one I'm a little bit nervous about. So, fingers crossed. Welcome back to Living with a Classic. I'm here with my 1975 XJ-S project car. If you're new to the channel and you want to catch up on the videos on this car, I'll put a link down below to the playlist and you can check them all out. But basically, what I want to do in today's video is, some people might think it's a little bit unnecessary, but we're going to do a basic health check on this engine. We're just going to do a compression test, and yes, I am aware that you can't tell everything from a compression test, but you can tell enough for what I need to know. It's been sitting for so long. Yes, it does run. However, I just want to make sure that there is some compression on every single cylinder. I know it probably won't be even. There'll be rust on valves and things, but all those things will even out once you run it. That's really all this needs. Probably some gummed up rings. We'll get some frequent oil changes when it's all back together with some new parts. But I just want to make sure that I have compression on every single cylinder before I spend quite a lot of time and money replacing, we're taking injectors out, rebuild those, new fuel hoses. We're going to tidy everything up. We're going to zinc plate a lot of things and just polish it, make it look nice. It would be a shame to do all of that and then realize, well, it has zero compression on one cylinder or something like that. So really, that's all I'm going to do. I've cleaned up the engine bay a little bit, got rid of some of the filth around here. Next step is to get some compressed air, blow out around the spark plugs. Hopefully, you can get those out. And then I have already made sure that the fuel pump's unplugged. I have also disarmed the ignition here. And I checked the engine does turn over again with the hot wire thing. Still need to sort out the key. But then they'll do all that and hopefully get a good compression reading, or at least something on every single cylinder. Already looking a lot better. So I already pulled this one off before. We got a spark plug down there. Let's try and get a socket on that, get it out, and see what it looks like. Alright, fingers crossed that this won't be too terrible. That was good. Hopefully it's the same person who put the spark plugs in who did the brakes, because there were NCCs on things there. So really hoping for that. Also, this thing shouldn't have really run anything that much with these plugs in, I think. Remind me to go and get my magnetic pen to get the other ones out. Okay. I don't know what kind of spark plug that is. Has anyone heard of a spark plug called Brisk? Okay. Not strange. Darkened City, but they look pretty much brand new. Nothing weird or anything. But yeah, never heard of Brisk. I will not bore you guys with spark plug removal. I'll remove the rest of them, let you guys know what they look like, and well, if you find anything odd, then we'll move on to the fun bit, which is the compression test. We've gone through this a couple times with changing plugs on these engines. If you're lucky, it's a pre-HE like this one. It's a lot easier than the HE just because of the angle of them. But one thing that is good to have one of these pliers, usually called fuel hose pliers or hose pliers. You get them pretty much anywhere. They're great for getting down to where the spark plug cables are, HC leads. Get good grip on them and lift them up. Maybe not so necessary when you remove them, but they're very, very necessary when you put them back. And especially once back here, there's no way that you can really get to them if you got big hands like I do. So very, very easy to remove. I have removed the spark plugs on the other side. The back ones were a little tighter than the front ones, but they all came out nicely. So hopefully they'll come out nicely here as well. I know I'm not short. I just have the car really high up on jack stands with the front brakes taken off. And yeah, felt like doing this while waiting for brake parts. So I will remove these as well. And like I showed before, it's really good just to have regular spark plug socket and a swivel. 1/2 inch works really well on the pre-HE. If you're dealing with the HE, and if it's a light one with a bunch of stuff, smaller socket set is recommended. There's a different spark plug socket as well, but a smaller one like a 3/8 or something, yeah, it'll be a little bit easier. Up front, there are a couple tricks to get those out on the HE engine, but we've gone through that before. Okay, should be on. Let's see if the back ones are as tight on this side. No, not that bad. The back one over there was really tight, so I unscrewed it almost all the way, and then I actually screwed it back in just because I want to make sure that the threads were okay. When I take them all out, I'll probably just run a tap through them when I have everything apart later, just to chase the threads, to make sure nothing is cross-threaded. And that one is looking exactly the same as all the other ones. Dark and sooty and pretty much brand new. Because when I got my XJ-12, this cylinder right up here was cross-threaded pretty badly. I managed to save the threads, luckily, with a tap. But yeah, you don't want that to happen. Okay, I'm just going to remove the last of them, and then we'll go on to the compression test. All 12 plugs are now out, and they basically all look, let me see if it focuses, they all look exactly like this, except 2 of them, which have a slight bit of oxidation on them. I saw this over there. If you can see, oh, there's so much in the way, but you see this sort of brownish stuff over there? That's around the spark plug well. So my guess is that there was at some point a little bit of water standing there, which of course that could happen with this thing sitting outside or something else. I don't really know. Maybe they tried to wash off the engine or something. And I'll bring you guys over to the other side so you can see those spark plugs. So I'm not massively concerned by it, but definitely 2 of them are a little bit different. So you can see, I'm trying to bring the light here, but that one is a little different, and there is a tiny bit on that one as well right there, just a little bit of white fuzz. So this is something I could expect from maybe a valve being open, like an exhaust valve, and moisture getting in. And this, I think, is just probably moisture going the other way a little bit. So hopefully everything is fine there. I really don't think it's too bad. And I don't think it's burning coolant or anything like that, because I would see that on the tip here, not out there on the side. But I'm going to leave them here in order. We'll do a compression test, take the notes, and if we see something odd on these 2, we can investigate further with my borescope. Let's start with the A bank and cylinder number 1 in here. These engines are not like the HEs, they're not as high compression. The compression ratio on an HE is, I believe, 12.5 to 1 on the Europeans and 11.5 to 1 on non-European. And then you have these, the pre-HEs, they're 11 to 1 European, and the North American ones are sadly just 7 to 1. So Not going to be the crazy high compression numbers that you get on the HEs, but still should see a pretty healthy number. And at the moment, I'm really just looking for anything at all. This thing hasn't got a proper run in years, so just that shows anything at all will be good. Why won't this thread in? I think we're pretty much there. Yep, should be seated now. Get this on here. Okay, keep an eye on the gauge. I'm going to crank the engine over. And like I said before, I have disabled the ignition and I have also disabled the fuel pump. So the injectors will probably still click, but everything else should be, shouldn't be able to start. Normally, if this was an XJ-12, I would just hotwire the starter in the engine bay, but the battery's not in the engine bay on an XJ-S, so that is not as easy. I'm also going to get something just to pry the throttle open at full tilt, so we get maximum amount of air into the engine. That's it. I believe that was about 5 compression revolutions. Let's see what we got. We have 135. That's not bad. I'm very happy with that. I was hoping for anything above 120, really, for sitting for this long. We're going to note all this down because also, I think we should do, just for fun, when this thing's back together on the road and it's been driven a bit, we should do a compression check again just to see how much these numbers have changed. I'll write that down. We'll do one more on video, and then I'll do all the other ones off camera and let you guys know what the results are. And cylinder 2A now. Okay, that sounded like it wasn't as good. Okay, we are getting, no, that was still really good. That is 132. So we're pretty even so far. I am going to do the rest of them, and I guess it's maybe spun over. Maybe it's just that the starter is coming back to life a little bit better, or all the ancillaries are not being as tight. Doesn't sound like the alternator is squeaking that badly anymore. But I'll do the rest of them and then I'll report back to you guys. So far things have been remarkably even. I'll show you everything later, but everything is around 130 and 135 PSI, which is really, really fantastic. I think we may have a good engine here. But I'm up to that one cylinder which had the slight oxidation on the plug. So that's the only one I'm a little bit nervous about. So, fingers crossed. Okay, let's see what the gauge says. And why am I even worried? It says 135 PSI. Alright, I'm going to do the last ones now. Alright, it's a little while later. It does take quite a while to do compression reading on a 12-cylinder engine. And we have good news and we have bad news. Let's start with the good news. So A-bank is really good. It's this side here. Cylinder 1, 135 PSI. It covers up. Cylinder 2, 132. Cylinder 3, 135. Cylinder 4, 132, cylinder 5, 125, and cylinder 6, 130. Really not bad at all considering how long this thing's been sitting and it hasn't gone for a good run. So I'm expecting most of those to go up, north of 150 PSI once this thing has really, really got a good run out on the highway with everything set up correctly fresh oil, a couple oil changes, all that, I think we'll be good to go. However, we do have one thing going on the B-Bank, but actually I'm not overly worried, but still not that great because it came out the last 2 cylinders I did. So B-Bank, 130 psi, 132, cylinder 3, 135, cylinder 4, 132. Going really well so far. Cylinder 5, 80 psi, cylinder 6, 60 psi. And when I was getting back here, I thought, okay, maybe something's happened to the gauge, maybe the battery's getting tired. It's still cranking really good. So what I did was I took the gauge and just put it back on cylinder 1, and this showed 130 psi on there. So nothing wrong with the gauge. Then I decided to do a wet test just on those 2, and they went up. So the wet test, which was just a couple drops of 20W50 oil, and it went up from 80 to 100 and from 60 to 75. So yeah, definitely something going on there. Honestly, not really overly worried about it so far because well, all the plugs were out of it when I was running, so if there would be like a blown head gasket between here, it would be much lower, I think, on one of them when the plug, it was pushing compression on the other side. Because you can have maybe pretty low on one cylinder if you have all the plugs in, because then the other cylinder actually helping with the compression if there's a blown head gasket between. I don't think that's what's going on. I think there's either 2 things going on. One is rings are more stuck than the amount of oil I put in there to sort of seal around them, or we have some rust or pitting on the valves in there if they have been open. That could have been going on. Or, who knows, maybe someone messed up with the valve clearances on those 2 cylinders. I mean, it is such a big engine, valve clearance is pretty complicated on these. That could definitely have happened. So it's one thing I think we'll have a look at. But that will be in future videos, we'll have a look at that. But I'm not worried to continue because even with these readings, because I'm thinking this is cold, this is going to go up, I think. Even with these readings, this thing will run, no problems at all. I mean, it won't make maximum power, but it will still be pretty smooth, and you know, we can start with that, we can go from there. We're not really wanting this to be a complete engine rebuild or a complete rebuild of this car. We just want to put it back on the road, make it really cool out and drive, and improve it along the way. And I do think that these 2 are coming back. One thing I can do, of course, is a leak down test. I do not have a leak down tester, but maybe I should get one. And then we could do those 2 cylinders and see if there's no intake or exhaust valves or rings, which would be really interesting. And also we can see if it's had gasket as well, because then we'll get bubbles coming up in the coolant, but I really don't think that's the case. It doesn't show any signs of coolant being burnt in any of the cylinders, and yeah. One thing I'm wondering if this could be is, this thing's been sitting for so long, the oil does smell like gas, which makes sense because it's fuel injected. Injectors may have been leaking now, and leaking down, or cold start injectors leaking, or something leaking, just putting a lot of fuel in the cylinders. So maybe those 2 bores are a little bit washed down with fuel. Maybe those 2 injectors are leaking. That might be causing the issue, and can definitely probably bring those rings back to life. Anyways, I think overall good news. We don't have a cylinder that is completely zero or doesn't react. So for instance, if it was 60 psi and nothing happened when I put oil in, I'd be a little bit more worried. But yeah, I wish those 2 cylinders were of course a little bit better than they are, but still pretty happy with this engine, and I do feel confident enough to order parts now to go on with the cosmetic and sort of big service of the engine that I'm going to do. However, we will do one thing before that. You will see the front brakes get finished, and we will drop the rear suspension and do that before we do the engine. Anyways, I hope you liked this video and that you're liking the project. If you're new to the channel and you want to continue following this project or any of the other ones on the channel, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a lot. Until next time, I'm Adam. This was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.